Modern Kolkata is shaped by its colonial architecture, and St. John's Church stands as one of the city's most prominent landmarks. The official history presents this building as a symbol of early Anglican power in India. It was designed to project authority, featuring massive neoclassical columns and a towering clock spire that dominated the 18th century skyline. However, the polished exterior hides an origin story rooted in the physical dismantling of an older, local empire. While the architecture draws the eye upward toward the spire, a different history is etched into the floor beneath the pews. Embedded in the floor are dark, heavy stone slabs bearing the carvings of Sultan Hussain Shah, a medieval Muslim ruler who governed Bengal centuries earlier. It is a sharp contradiction, a monument built for Christian worship, resting directly upon the sacred stones of an Islamic king. The presence of these stones raises a specific question. Why did the East India Company use a plundered royal tomb to build the floor of their church? By the late 1700s, colonial Calcutta was expanding rapidly. The East India Company were no longer just traders, they were becoming sovereign rulers. Their existing infrastructure was insufficient. The city's first church had been destroyed, and the old burial ground was overcrowded and falling into decay. To signal their permanence, the company planned a new church, St. John's. It was meant to be a grand stone monument that would outshine everything around it. But the project faced a geographical hurdle. Calcutta sat on the muddy, silty banks of the Hooghly River, a delta environment with no natural stone quarries nearby. Without local rock to build their grand vision, the British looked for an existing source of high-quality masonry they could repurpose. They found their source hundreds of miles to the north, in the abandoned medieval capital of Gar. Gar was the site of the tomb of Sultan Hussain Shah. For the people of Bengal, this was a sacred space belonging to one of their most significant historical figures. Unlike the swampy delta of Calcutta, Gar was filled with heavy stone architecture and finely carved basalt. The East India Company viewed the site through a purely practical lens. They saw the Sultan's tomb not as a monument to be respected, but as a stockpile of free building material. British authorities authorized the dismantling of the site. They stripped the stone from the arches and walls, gutting the Sultan's resting place. Massive foundation stones and even the decorative slabs of the tomb were pried from the earth and moved to the riverbanks. These heavy stones were loaded onto barges and floated hundreds of miles south along the Hooghly River to Calcutta. Once the cargo arrived, the stolen masonry was immediately integrated into the construction, forming the literal foundation and flooring of St. John's Church. The physical growth of the British capital was achieved by physically erasing the monuments of the empire that came before it. Returning to the interior of St. John's today, the space feels quiet and contemplative, but every step taken across these floors is a step over the plundered remains of a medieval kingdom. The Sultan's tombstone is a visible representative of a wider pattern. Throughout the city, many colonial structures likely contain similar histories of appropriation. This is architectural erasure. By building over the past of a conquered people, the company didn't just create a new city, they physically asserted their dominance over Bengal's history. These buildings are often celebrated simply as heritage, but that classification ignores the destructive process required to build them. St. John's Church is an architectural graveyard, a structure that only exists because a more ancient indigenous history was dismantled to make room for it.